If you are a Hardstuck TFT player looking to improve, this new YouTube series is for you. I'm having viewers submit their own gameplay from their ranks and VOD reviewing live on this channel. We're going to go through the good, the bad, and ugly of all decisions making and figuring out what we can do better. This new series is called Uncapped, where I try to get my viewers unstuck from their ranks. And if you want to submit, it's open for players of all ranks, from Iron all the way up to even Challenger. And who knows, maybe even I can learn a thing or two. All right, our first video is from a brave viewer named Decent Josh. Hello, Decent Josh here. Emerald player trying to push for Diamond by the end of the season. I am bad at high tempo lobbies like Prismatics and Crab Rave. I also can get pretty dizzy on a 4-2 roll down if I don't have a consistent game plan, such as Hard Force and Disco. In this game, I slammed the Pentakill emblem pretty early, but others decided to slam it anyways. I wanted to reroll, but realized too late after my roll down that other people had so many KOs. Should I have pivoted sooner? Should I have probably taken different augments? How do I push into top 4? This game was so close. So that's a really interesting premise. I do think a lot of players struggle with being contested. Let's go ahead and figure out what happened here with Josh, as I do think that if you do end up committing something like Pentakill, you do have more flexible options than the average player. So let's go ahead and analyze what actually happened. I like that Josh typed me mech no pivot. That's a reference to the first time TFT players decided to just hard commit and say, if you contest me, we're going to go 7th, 8th. The reference to set 3, which is actually live right now. You can play. It's called set 3.5 revival. Fun times. Me mech no pivot. Fun fact is how Kiyun became a popular streamer, because he was a player that hard forced mech to rank 1 and then won tournaments doing so. So right away, we get Pentakill Olaf in the shop, and we can slam a Pentakill emblem. So this is a really good start and a strong reason of why we should be thinking about Pentakill early, because the first thing that I want to say is if you do have an ability to commit to an emblem early, you're going to be at advantage of people who don't. A lot of people who end up holding onto their spatulas throughout the stage 2 and stage 3 and they don't have anything to make of it are just going to be at a disadvantage because they're making fewer items than the other people who are. And you're going to have more powerful traits on the board, and so you're going to be able to play higher tempo. So in a lot of ways, you should be thinking about Spatula as having an extra item compared to other portals where you don't actually start off with as many components. Another viable strategy with Spatula is to not slam the Spatula and try to hope that you can get another Spatula off of Carousel and then make a Tactician's Crown, and therefore you're up an entire unit. But that's kind of case by case, and you should evaluate that if you don't have a strong opener whatsoever. Funny enough, let's look at the augments and analyze the situation. Right away, we look at Young, Wild, and Free, and that is the strongest of the 3 options here. 1, we want to play high tempo because we hit Olaf, and Olaf is very likely to streak on stage 2 or preserve a lot of HP. And we're also playing a spatula-based portal, meaning that we can pick up a second spatula and either make a second Pentakill emblem or go back to what we said before, which is just make a Tactician's Crown immediately. So this is the most powerful option immediately, and I think that it's much stronger than the usual 2-1 Young, Wild, and Free. I think people usually only want to pick this augment at 3-2 once they realize that they have been streaking and they want to start getting really powerful things in the middle and late stages of the game. But in this spot, I think it's much better on 2-1 in particular. And good for something is not necessarily as strong because we're trying to win. And good for something is usually better for a lose streak situation. We're trying to rack up a lot of gold early. I think Bear Treasures is fine. It's a safe option. I just think that Young, Wild, and Free is better. He rerolls the other 2 options and looks at Harmless and Unified. I think these are also okay, solid options, but I think Young, Wild, and Free is just a lot better. Harmless is weak early and a lot better in the late stage of the game once you have enough damage to make this percentage matter a lot. And then Unified Resistance is, it's solid. It's fine. It's also something he could have picked here if he felt like Young, Wild, and Free wasn't as good. Something defensive to synergize with the Bruisers and high HP is pretty good. All right, so right away, making the first good augment choice. I like that. Repping the Emerald player as well, making them proud, Josh. Now, I think that we should really consider leveling and playing a Bruiser here because we want to really make the trait strong for Olaf. And he does not. He chooses instead to stay at level 3 because he's busy about thinking about what he wants to slam a Pentakill emblem. And he misses this opportunity to actually go for Bruiser on Olaf. And that's a big deal because Olaf scales with the health that he has on a champion. So it does actually matter with how much HP Olaf does have in particular because he gets stronger. Looks like we barely win this fight though. And then we sell Tom Ken. So we don't even have our next unit to play. So this is also another thing to think about, which is if you know you're going to be leveling the next round, you should also be thinking about what is my next unit that I'm going to play. So we did end up getting lucky and we hit another Bruiser with Gragas, so that ended up being okay. But we could have actually had another Bruiser and maybe even been in a position where we could have played for 4 Bruiser and have a really strong 4 Bruiser Pentakill early game to snowball our advantage. I think the logic of not leveling here is because Josh thinks about the possibility of re-rolling Olaf which I think is also okay, but we only have 4 Olafs, and we're playing things like Young, Wild, and Free. And so if we're going to be playing for like a high pentakill count strategy, we actually want to push levels because it's going to be difficult to hit those higher tier units if we're just going to be staying low level and rolling for Olaf. Scouting around, and we're seeing like a lot of people commit to other things like a Hardstuck emblem, an 8-bit emblem. So that's good news-ish for now. There's also some people who haven't committed to it. Recommend picking up Urgot in this spot. Urgot is one of the strongest stage 2 and stage 3 champions you can play around. Okay, so we're going on carousel. We have Young, Wild, and Free, and we beeline it for the sword. And this sword, I'm guessing he's going to try to make Bloodthirster and prioritize playing items on Olaf. So we're on a 3 streak here, and now we want to level and keep our tempo high. Little small thing, like had we kept Tahm Kench, we probably could have had Tahm Kench 2. We would have been in a better spot. Okay, so he's not leveling, so this almost makes him feel like he is very much committed to reroll at this point. But the thing is, he has Pentakill Olaf, and Pentakill Olaf is significantly weaker than Bruiser Olaf. This is something that is kind of just meta-specific knowledge. Like, just Olaf is scaling with Bruiser, and so you want to give him a lot more HP. And Pentakill gives him damage, which you would think intuitively that ends up being better, right? Because you have more damage on your carry, so you can do better. But in reality, you actually want to go for 6 Bruiser for Olaf. So this is not actually the ideal Olaf setup. On top of that, you're not really looking for items like Bloodthirster because Olaf has built-in Omnivamp already into his kit. So it's not like a high priority thing compared to survivability for Olaf, which a lot of people are prioritizing things like Titans, Quicksilver, or other things that help scale off of the percentage HP like Asterix Gauge. Bloodthirster is totally fine because it gives you a shield based off of your HP, so I think it's okay. But it's something to think about when you're moving forward because this is not exactly the ideal Olaf setup. Okay, so we 5-streaked and we have 5 Olafs, so things are looking good so far. So if we choose to reroll Olaf from here, it's pretty okay, but 5 starts to be a little bit in that danger zone count. And here's another element to think about as well, which is you're already really ahead in terms of having HP. And so one thing to think about when you're playing from these spots is if you are ahead, how can you continue to push that advantage and stay ahead? In a spot like this, you might be feeling like, okay, well, I'm so far ahead. Surely I can just hit the Olaf and then I'll be able to streak and continue that momentum. But if you also choose to level, that is a guaranteed way to get stronger. And then you'll be able to build onto that advantage to play the higher tier champions. And as a result, you'll be so far ahead of everybody else that economically, you're just outscaling everybody. The way to throw away a lead is if this case, you roll a bunch of gold, you don't hit. And all of a sudden, all that HP and that win streak gold that you racked up is not going to amount to any advantage that you're able to push into the mid game. TFT at its core is a war of resources as well as a war of your composition, and trying to leverage that early game advantage to snowball is really important. So in this case, because we don't have the ideal headliner for Olaf, and while we do have a vest that could build into a Titans, we don't have the ideal setup for Olaf's items either. I would recommend pushing levels and instead trying to play for Viego and higher tier champions. And so we start rolling, and right away, it starts feeling bad. Okay, so we just rolled 12 of our gold, and right away, this starts to put red flags and big blaring alarm sounds in my head. 12 gold is almost the entirety of the advantage of win streaking that we just got. So by rolling this 12 gold immediately, and our board didn't improve whatsoever, and it still doesn't look like we're very close to that Olaf 3 or anything close to getting a really big power spike, we just lost the entire advantage of stage 2. Okay, so we spent 20 gold, and all we have is a Kinnan 2 and 8 Evelyn 2 on our bench. That has nothing to show for it. So we could have used that to level and have stronger guaranteed units and play for higher tier champions. There's also Riven 2 on the other side, so it looks like we lose because Riven 2 is a lot better than Olaf 2. We're also looking at this Pentakill Kale and thinking about locking it probably because, spoiler, he does try to go for Kale. Let's go ahead and talk about that after the augments. Keepers, Cybernetic Uplink, you have my sword. None of these are particularly like outstanding, but you have my sword is probably the most solid option out of all of these because it gives you a mixture of damage for combat as well as a little bit of item resources. I think I like this done the most. Cybernetic Uplink and Keepers are also okay, but Keepers is much more for like disco-oriented boards because you want to naturally clump and you want to get like a lot of benefit for clumping, and we're not really doing that right now. And Uplink is kind of mid because, well, our best unit is Olaf, and we're not trying to get uplink value on Olaf. Even if we're trying to sell it and replace it, it doesn't feel like it's very strong right now. So he rolls all of them and gets the option of Heroic Grab Bag, Contagion, Not Today. This is a spot where if you want to go for a reroll, Heroic Grab Bag can be good. So I'm going to go ahead and say it. I don't think this is a really good Kale spot because we have no Kale items whatsoever. If our Olaf items were awkward and we have Bloodthirster, it's going to be even more of a difficulty getting it if we're trying to go for Bloodthirster on Kale. Not Today is also a little bit more specific. You want to play around champions like Viego and Zed and Kiana. It's like very melee fighter oriented. We could end up playing it and putting on Olaf. That's actually not a bad play. But I think Contagion is a lot more generic and safe and allows you to get some combat power through augments. So I think I would go for Contagion here. Okay, but in his mind, he wants to reroll. So he wants to go for the Kale 3, which I can understand that is like something that you want to do. Okay, so we do pick up this Rogue grab bag and we're going to level to 6. Let's go ahead and analyze this spot in particular now that he's at level 6 and he's fighting and he's in his mind committed to, I guess, Kale reroll. The thing is, Kale is a unit that right now wants to scale off of 2 things: EP and attack speed. And right now our components that are open are belt and vest. So that means that even if we get a bow or a rod off of Carousel, we still don't have an item that we can make for this Kale immediately. That means that we have to wait till the end of stage 3 to potentially get the perfect item to drop. And that means that if we get the perfect item to drop, we have 1 item done on Kale. This is why a lot of people want to play Superfan, because Superfan helps these reroll comps get online much quicker and get an item to at least bridge that gap. But you're telling me that even if we do get lucky, we have 1 item out of 3 on our carry? I don't think this is necessarily one of those things where you look around and be like, wow, I am contested and therefore things went terrible. I think it's one of those situations where we need to be more cognizant of what makes Kale strong, which is bow-based items with AP. And then once we realize that we have a good spot for, we commit to it. Okay, we have Young, Wild, and Free, and we go for a rod onto the Akali. Josh says that there's no spatula. He types in chat like, no spatula. I'm so frustrated by that. But in reality, even if you had another spatula, the spot would still be really awkward, because let's say we do make a second spatula emblem. Now we are definitely not making any Kale items, and we have this Kale with heroic grab bag that will have 0 items be done. And that's one of those things where spatulas can even be bait at times. In these kinds of spots, I actually think it's really important to also consider rolling and being aggressive to try to hit KO 3 now, because there is a matter of when KO 3 is effective relative to the rest of the game. The strongest KO 3 will ever be is stage 3. The second strongest she'll ever be is stage 4, and then so on and so forth. She continues to fall off in power. And so if we take too long for KO 3 to get online, we're going to actually lose a lot of the reason why she's strong in the first place, which is she can do a lot more damage early than other people are prepared for, and then we can use that advantage to get a secondary or a third carry with pentakill. And so if we're waiting too long to get this KO 3 online, even if we do get the right items and everything lines up, she's not even gonna be that effective. So I think from this spot, we should be rolling way more aggressively, try to capitalize onto our augments, and get value off of heroic grab bag in stage 3 while we can. Otherwise, we're never really gonna get value off of this at appropriate timeline. We might as well have waited to stage 4 to pick things like heroic grab bag. One of these to consider is that Josh is on a 3 win streak right now, and he's not doing anything to protect his win streak. He's just simply trying to play one unit to improve. You have to remember the rest of the lobby is also getting stronger, right? Like a lot of people are also getting things off carousel and also rolling their gold and committing to things. The only thing we've done is replace one of our units with a Kali, which is pretty decent, and then put a rod on our Kale. That's not that strong. Another small note for optimization is if you pick up an orb and there are champions in and there's no space on your bench, those orbs convert to gold. And so if for some reason there was a orb that had things that he would really need, then instead of getting that unit, he just converted off of it. And we're holding units that we don't even care about, like a Senna and honestly a Jax and Yone don't even really matter. The number of slots you want to clear on your bench is 3, because you can only get dropped maximum of 3 champions per orb. You can get 3 1 costs or 3 2 costs, or in golden orbs cases, you can get 3 3 costs. So something to think about for Josh in terms of just managing your bench space. And the worst case scenario has happened, which is no bows have dropped, and the best item we can make on Kale is a Morello, which I think actually is one of the best things we can do. Someone straight up FF, so at least it's not an 8th. We got that going for us. And now Josh is rolling a little bit to see if he can get this Kale, but now you're starting to see like how things are getting awkward, and now we're really falling really far behind economically. Like we're not anywhere close to Kale 3, and now we're in a spot where it feels like we're hard committed to rolling for it. Oh my god, we just rolled like 30 gold, 40 gold, and we have no extra Kales, and we're not even slamming our items either. We have no Kale items. The best Kale item we can make here is a Jewel Gauntlet, now that I'm thinking about it as well, because we want to get just straight up damage onto her. Our headliner has no items. Our heroic grab bag has no value because we're just playing down an entire augment. We haven't actually gotten value off of it. And overall, we should have been pushing levels. We could have been probably pushing level 8 and thinking about how we can get a 7 pentakill setup with Akali and playing around Akali. Like just rewinding and looking at these items, this is like totally fine to play for Viego because we have like Bloodthirster. We can go for like Bloodthirster, Warmogs, and Steadfast Hard, or we have a Rod. We can go like Morello on Viego and like try to play around Akali. Like, or we could play around Karthus because we have like an open Rod. We can go like JG Karthus and like start playing around that as well. We have a lot of different options that we could have thought about had we pushed levels because our advantage was so great. Taking a look at the augments we have here, at this point, we're too committed to the KO plan, so I think the best option here is you have my bow because Rageblade is one of the most important items onto KO. Achuan is also not the worst because you could end up slamming like Morello and try to make that second Rod and something else. But I don't think it's Crown Guard at all. He rerolls all the options and looks like he's leaning towards Big Grab Bag. I think out of all these three, I think Martyr is the best because you want to actually have strength with your reroll. One concept to remember is that reroll is playing lower tier units, and other people who are playing 4 and 5 cost units are going to have naturally stronger units because they just have higher tier stuff. And so a lot of the ways that you can make up for that strength deficit is through having the 3 stars earlier and also having combat augments to help multiply the effectiveness of your lower tier units. So having no combat augments whatsoever already makes this reroll comp very dicey. I do understand why he took Big Grab Bags because he doesn't have items for his KO. So that is usually a desperate situation. And quite frankly, it's one of those things where you think about like, well, I have no choice. I have to kind of go for something like this. So I understand where his head's at. And honestly, it's not that bad logic, right? At its core, he's thinking correctly. Like, I don't have items on my KO. I'm trying to go KO 3. I haven't hit KO. I'm trying to salvage. So I don't blame him for making this pick. But now we're scouting around and we're seeing like that a lot of people are online and they're also hitting their 2-star 4 costs, and we're still stuck here on KO. Another thing to think about is we have to kind of play for HP because, wait a second, someone else just FF'd here. Dula kill, minus 99. He was at 60 HP. Well, at least it's not 7th, I guess. Okay, we hit Echo 2, so we're starting to get at least a couple of more units upgraded on the front line. Someone hit Riven 3, so that kind of makes us feel like we are really behind in terms of hitting tempo. Wait, a third person FF in this lobby? Okay, well, here's my pro tip. If you can get into lobbies where 3 people FF, the worst placement you'll get at 5th, looks like you're probably going to climb. Well, I mean, this is probably a guaranteed top 4 then, right? 4 people at 70 HP and 1 person at 17. If we don't top 4 from here, we basically win 8th. But the 17 HP player, I believe, hit Riven 3, so they're actually quite strong. Okay, off the carousel, we go for Rod onto a Jhin, and this is actually something that I think we need to also emphasize, which this Rod on Jhin is actually yet again another tragedy because we still don't have items for our KO. We didn't have any bows to actually play off of, so if we took like you have my bow, now we would have Rageblade guaranteed. We wouldn't have things like the Hand of Justice on the Akali and other items onto our Mordekaiser, but kind of going back to what we're saying is we're still playing around 1 item carry, and now we are trying to play around 2-star Akali, which is actually good. But just, you know, it is kind of a really funky situation where someone has 2-star Akali before we can hit 3-star KO and been rolling for a long time. So this is low roll for sure. And we do end up getting a pretty crucial win here, which is nice. I'm starting to think we're never going to hit this KO 3. So I think we're going to top 4 this game. Okay, we side swap. We abandoned a couple of units. Positioning for this fight was pretty suboptimal. We didn't really get to protect our Yone, and we also aren't really maximizing the value of our units. When you're playing things like Stoneplate, you're really not getting a lot of value by putting it right here because the only aggression area you're going to be getting is through the top right, and only the top right angle of people that are attacking this, because every unit in the center and the top left are going to be focusing on like these units instead. And so you really want to make sure to maximize the positioning of things like this Mordekaiser, if you can, alongside the Echo. And you don't really want things like this Yone and this Gnar to be taking aggression because they're not really tanks. They're supposed to be kind of like off tank / off carries and just help to provide a lot of support units and damage. I also didn't really talk about it, but this Yone actually isn't really doing anything because we don't have edgelords. We don't have Viego, so we probably could be playing a better unit and be thinking about something like Executioner as well. Okay, we finally get a bow, so we immediately make Rageblade. And finally, we get 2 items on KO. The only item we can make here is Giant Slayer at this point. We need to make sure that we get 3 items on KO. So we finally did it. 3 items onto our carry. And it took the entirety of all of our item drops, while some people have had it for multiple stages. And so I think this at its core just goes back to the original concept of when to commit to a reroll comp, which is the items that you have, the augments that you have available as well, and whether or not you have a good chance of hitting it early. Josh only had one of those three things, which is the heroic grab bag and the ability to hit it early. But the augments aren't particularly screaming that we should go for reroll outside of heroic grab bag. And we didn't really necessarily have that much justification to go for it based off our items. Looks like we do get a fortunate fight versus the ghost, so we're able to at least get this win. I think we also are fixing things like our positioning because we have things moved back a little bit, so that's more guys can take more aggro. And now we go to 8 and try to play for 7 pentakill, which I think is correct. In the end, we're trying to play around the core concepts that we know are good, right? We know 7 pentakill is good. We know getting like the edgelord and everything online for Kale is good with these items. It's just the path that we took here is what bled so much HP. Josh goes for an adaptive. This is probably for his Karthus. You can also think about 3-item Mordekaiser because if we're playing Rageblade, we want to scale our backline carry. And stalling with a good frontline is one of the key ways to get a good Rageblade setup. He ends up selling his Kale and finds a headliner Karthus. But we also sold our Olaf, and therefore we don't have 7 pentakill again. And finally, at 5-5, we get value off of our 3-2 augments. Okay, well, this board actually looks really strong. Oh my gosh, we're losing by so many units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units, and we die? And we went 5th? Oh no. 5th here when 3 people FF'd is like, it's like going 8th. Oh no. Well, we lost 10 LP, but this is the most painful 10 LP loss I've ever seen. So when Josh was saying, how do I push into top 4 and how close it was, my recommendation would be try to have 4 people FF in your game so you can get to top 4. But on a more serious note, I think this game was definitely top 4able. You just needed to clean up a lot of our macro decision making around when we reroll and what are the conditions for it. Do we have the right items? Do we have the right augment setup? Do we have enough copies? Does it even make sense to reroll versus push levels? These are the questions that if you're able to answer, Josh, you're going to be able to nail those top 4s moving forward. And even when you're playing in these situations where you feel like you're really contested, you're going to navigate much cleaner and find a way to preserve HP so that way you can at least get 4th if 3 people FF, man. First of all, I want to thank Josh for being really brave and stepping up and sending his VOD. It's not easy to subject yourself to thousands of people watching and potentially embarrassing yourself through whatever mistakes you make. But I want to say that I don't think a lot of the ideas were bad. It was really about whether or not you recognize the spot that you can actually convert off a reroll and then figuring out what to do if the game plan wasn't coming together really easily, which is we probably should have abandoned things like the heroic grab bag or sending and rolling a lot more aggressively and hitting things like that KO3 to preserve HP and then figuring out items later. What do you guys think of Josh's play? Am I being too harsh? Or am I being not harsh enough? Some people might actually even bite in deeper. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. This is our first of our Frodan coaching series. If you want to submit your own video, please join my Discord in the description below and link a YouTube video of yourself playing. It must be in 1080p. And also please give me a background of what you're trying to work on as well as a little bit about yourself so I can understand you as a player. There's no rank requirements for you to submit the videos. It could be Iron all the way to Grandmasters. And I hope I can develop these series further to help all of you guys improve and get to the rank you've always wanted. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.